Rebecca Lawson sat quietly in front of her computer screen, the warm yellow glow of the desk lamp casting a soft light over her tired but determined face. It was 9 p.m. on a Friday, and she was still working as usual, reviewing security reports, checking system update procedures for the upcoming major maintenance. She took a sip of coffee, the bitter yet soothing taste spreading across her tongue. 25 years at Hartman Technologies had turned nights like these into a routine. Spending time with family? Not much. Weekends off? That had become a luxury. Rebecca never complained. She loved her job. She loved the feeling of solving problems, the challenge of ensuring Sentinel Shield never failed. She loved the company, or at least she used to think so. Then, suddenly an email appeared. A notification window lit up in the corner of the screen. She glanced at it, thinking it was just another routine email. But when her eyes caught the subject line, a cold shiver ran down her spine. Envelope with arrow subject. Organizational restructuring notice. Her heart sank. She clicked on it and the screen opened. Dear Ms. Lawson, as part of our strategic realignment, we have decided to sunset your position, effective immediately. Your contributions have been valued, but in today's evolving tech landscape, we must embrace more modern solutions. HR will follow up on Monday regarding severance and asset retrieval. Best regards, Michael Hartman, CEO. Rebecca read it 3 times. For times, there had to be a mistake. She closed her eyes, her heart pounding. A tight, suffocating feeling gripped her chest. After 25 years, after thousands of sleepless nights, hundreds of crisis management plans, dozens of times working for free just to keep Sentinel Shield stable, they fired her with an email? No thank you. No meeting. No chance to defend herself. She pulled her hands away from the keyboard, leaned back in her chair, her eyes fixed on the screen as if it would offer some kind of logical explanation. But there was nothing except the cold, indifferent words of Michael Hartman, the CEO who had been in charge for less than 3 years, a man she had never fully trusted. She thought back to all the warning signs, the meetings she was suddenly excluded from, the major projects reassigned to younger managers, the workshops on innovative thinking that Michael constantly pushed. She had seen this coming, but she never thought it would happen like this. She grabbed her phone, hands trembling, and called Josh Wilkins, the company's CTO. They had worked together for over a decade. He had to know about this. Josh's voice was hesitant when he picked up. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. She couldn't find the words. You knew about this? Her voice was dry, colder than the email she had just read. Rebecca, I tried to stop it, but this came from the top. They want a new direction. They think we need modern thinking. She laughed bitterly. Modern thinking? You mean getting rid of the people who have kept this company alive for 25 years? Josh sighed heavily. She knew he felt guilty, but the betrayal still burned. They said the company needs fresh perspectives. She gripped her phone tighter, biting her lip until she nearly drew blood. They think I don't matter. They think I'm replaceable. Josh stayed silent, and that was the only answer she needed. Rebecca hung up, placed her phone back on the desk, her eyes still locked on the screen. The words in the email mocked her, as if 25 years of dedication meant nothing. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. But anger, pain, and betrayal boiled inside her. She thought back to everything she had done. The sleepless nights, fixing system failures before clients even noticed. The holidays spent at the office, while the decision-makers were vacationing with their families. The projects she led, only to have credit stolen by others when they were presented to the executives. The countless times the system crashed, and everyone ran to her desk for answers. And now, they tossed her aside like outdated equipment. She laughed, but in that laughter was pain and sheer disbelief. They thought she could be replaced? She looked down at her hands, the hands that had typed millions of lines of code, that had designed and protected the entire Sentinel Shield infrastructure. No one in the company understood the system like she did. No one knew the hidden workarounds she had created over the years. She picked up her phone and typed one final message to Michael Hartman. "Thank you for showing me my true worth." Then she turned off her phone. She was no longer an employee of Hartman Technologies. But deep down, she knew one thing for sure. They would come back begging for her. And when that day came, she would be the one in control. Rebecca Lawson stood by the living room window, gazing out at the dimly lit Dallas skyline. A glass of red wine rested in her hand, yet she hadn't taken a sip. Her fingers traced the rim of the glass absent-mindedly, her mind still echoing the cold, detached words from her termination email. "We need innovation. We need modernization. We no longer need you." Did they really think she wasn't important? She set the glass down on the table, taking a deep breath. They had no idea what they had just done. Hartman Technologies wasn't just another software company. It survived because of one product, Sentinel Shield, a cutting-edge security system that protected major financial institutions, large hospitals, and even some government agencies. And Rebecca was the architect of that system's very foundation. They didn't understand. They thought someone else could replace her. But no one at that company knew the system the way she did. No one understood the hidden lines of code she had spent years fine-tuning, ensuring the system ran seamlessly, even under the worst conditions. 5 years ago, Sentinel Shield had been discovered to have a critical flaw. Every year, when the system updated its security certificates, it automatically rejected the new certificates, causing a total system lockdown. At the time, no one at the company could figure out a solution. Except for Rebecca. She had personally written a manual override, a temporary fix to bridge the gap. But because upper management refused to admit to the flaw in the original design, they buried the issue, never documented it, and simply assumed Rebecca would always be there to fix it every year. There was just one problem. Rebecca wasn't there anymore. And in 2 weeks, Hartman Technologies would roll out a critical security update. Without her, the entire system would collapse. Over the past year, Rebecca had sent 3 emails warning about this issue. No one responded. She had proposed funding for the engineering team to permanently fix the flaw. Her proposal was rejected. She had written a detailed guide on how to apply the patch each year. Michael Hartman deleted it. She remembered the meeting 3 months ago when she had stood before the board and warned them about the security risks. Michael had scoffed at her. "We need forward-thinking solutions, Rebecca, not outdated procedures." She had tried to save them from their own mistakes. They didn't listen. Rebecca opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the security archive folders, where she had kept her personal notes on Sentinel Shield for years. Thousands of lines of code, hundreds of troubleshooting notes. She could send them to Hartman right now. Warn them. Help them avoid the disaster that was coming. She quietly closed her laptop instead. Not my problem anymore. They had called her obsolete. They had said she wasn't needed. Well then, they could figure it out on their own. Hartman Technologies had no idea that they had planted a ticking time bomb within their own system. They had no idea that in just 2 weeks, their largest clients would face authentication failures, be locked out of the system, and lose access to critical data. They had no idea that in 3 weeks, if they couldn't fix it, the company would lose millions in contracts and potentially face lawsuits. They had no idea that soon they would be begging Rebecca to come back. But by the time they realized it, it was already too late. 2 days after being fired, Rebecca received a call from Josh Wilkins, the CTO. "Rebecca, could you check something on Sentinel Shield for us?" She took a sip of coffee, smiling to herself. "I thought I was obsolete, Josh?" Silence. 3 days later, the second call came, this time from Michael Hartman. "Rebecca, we need to talk." She looked at the phone, letting it ring for a few more seconds. Then she slowly set it down without answering. They would have to beg harder. And when that day came, she would be the one in control. Rebecca sat in a small cafe near her house, sipping on a morning cappuccino. Sunlight streamed through the window, but inside her, there was only the cold darkness of betrayal. 5 days had passed since she received that email, and the strangest thing was, she no longer felt pain. She was just waiting. She knew what was coming, and right on cue, her phone vibrated on the table. The name flashing on the screen made her smirk. Josh Wilkins, CTO. Here we go, she murmured, pressing the answer button. Rebecca, we need help. Josh's voice was clearly panicked, something she had never heard from him before. Oh, I thought you guys had fresh perspectives now, she replied, dragging out her words deliberately. There's no time for this, Rebecca, Josh spoke quickly. Sentinel Shield is experiencing major issues. The system is rejecting all new security certificates, and no one on the team can figure out why. Rebecca scoffed. Really? I warned about this 6 months ago. If I recall correctly, everyone ignored me. Josh let out a frustrated sigh. Rebecca, our clients are starting to notice the failure. Some major financial institutions are threatening to sue because they can't access their data. If we don't fix this, they'll pull their contracts. Well then, I suggest you all start working a little harder, she said, completely unfazed. Rebecca, please. Josh pleaded. Not my problem anymore, Josh, she said and hung up. She knew it still wasn't time to step in. They needed to suffer more. 2 days later, her phone rang again. This time it was Michael Hartman, CEO. Rebecca simply stared at the screen, not picking up. She let it ring endlessly until the voicemail notification appeared. Rebecca, we need to talk. The system is crashing and no one can fix it. I know there have been differences between us, but I'm hoping you'll help. She didn't answer. Instead, she opened her laptop and checked the latest news about the company. A wave of headlines flooded the screen. Fire, Hartman Technologies faces major security failure. Top clients considering legal action. Fire, Sentinel Shield update fails, leading cybersecurity system completely unusable. Fire, investors in panic over unprecedented crisis at Hartman Technologies. Rebecca smiled with satisfaction. She had warned them. They didn't listen. Now they were drowning in the flames they had set themselves. That evening, as Rebecca was curled up on her sofa reading a book, her phone rang again. Michael Hartman's name flashed on the screen, but this time she picked up. Rebecca. Michael's voice was stripped of arrogance, now filled with desperation. We'll pay you. We're willing to bring you on as a consultant to fix this. Name your price. Rebecca slowly set her book down, letting the silence stretch. Name my price. Yes, Michael swallowed hard. We need you. We realize now that you were more important than we thought. I need a number, she said, her voice as sharp as steel. 3,000 a day for 2 weeks. Not enough, she said immediately. 4,000, he corrected. Rebecca chuckled softly. 6,000 a day. Paid up front. No refunds. Rebecca. You have 2 choices, Michael. Sign the contract now and I'll fix your system. Or let Hartman Technologies collapse entirely. You have 10 seconds to decide. She could hear his shaky breathing on the other end. Fine, he finally said. We agree. The next day, Rebecca logged back into Hartman Technologies' system, and what she saw was absolute chaos. Messages from the engineering team flooded the internal chat. Speech balloon, someone help. I have no idea where this error is coming from. Speech balloon, we're about to lose the entire system. Speech balloon, Michael is losing his mind. One of our biggest clients just sent a warning email. Rebecca calmly cracked her fingers and got to work. And in just 3 days, the system was fully repaired. But as she was preparing to end her contract, another email popped up in her inbox. From Michael Hartman. Rebecca, we want you to return as a full-time employee. You can name your salary. We cannot afford to lose you again. Rebecca scoffed. She had been waiting for this moment. She clicked reply. I have already accepted a new job. But there is one thing you can do for me, Michael. Thank me for 25 years of dedication. For the nights I stayed at the company while you slept. For the sacrifices you never noticed. For protecting this company while you only knew how to destroy it. Thank me for not letting it collapse, even though I had the chance to let it. She closed her laptop and poured herself another glass of wine. Hartman Technologies had survived, but not because of them. It survived because of the woman they once deemed obsolete. Rebecca Lawson sat in front of her computer screen, staring at the familiar lines of code. She was no longer an employee of Hartman Technologies, but at this very moment, she held the fate of the entire company in her hands. 3 days ago, they had fired her without remorse, saying that she was outdated, that they needed fresh perspectives. Now, they were on their knees, begging her to come back. Rebecca wasn't coming back as a humiliated employee. She returned as the victor. As she walked through the doors of Hartman Technologies that morning, every pair of eyes turned to her. The people who once ignored her in meetings now avoided her gaze. The ones who mocked her warnings now trembled as they saw her enter the engineering department. She strolled through the lobby, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. This time, no one dared to treat her as invisible. Michael Hartman was already waiting for her in the top-floor conference room. He stood up and extended his hand. Thank you for coming, Rebecca. She looked at him for a moment, then ignored his handshake, pulled out a chair, and sat down without saying a word. Michael swallowed hard, lowering his hand awkwardly. We have finalized the contract, he continued, trying to maintain his composure. We believe you can help us resolve this issue. Rebecca crossed her legs, raising an eyebrow at him. I have been saving this company for 25 years. Now, I'm only here to make sure you don't destroy it completely. She opened her laptop, connecting to the Sentinel Shield system. In just 5 minutes, she had already found the problem. They had done everything wrong. Instead of following the security protocol she had previously warned them about, they tried rewriting the code, only to break the entire authentication framework. A catastrophic mistake. Rebecca let out a quiet chuckle, but not because she was amused. It was because their stupidity was beyond anything she had imagined. Who decided to fix the system this way? She asked. Josh Wilkins, the CTO, looked away, avoiding her gaze. He hesitated, clearly unwilling to admit failure. Did I not warn that altering the authentication framework without understanding its structure would be disastrous? Michael remained silent. Josh stared down at the table, unable to respond. Rebecca shook her head. They had destroyed the company with their own arrogance. She knew they needed her, but this time she would not give anything for free. I will fix this, she said, her voice cold and unwavering. But I have one condition. Michael narrowed his eyes. What do you want? Rebecca slowly closed her laptop, leaning back in her chair, letting the silence build tension in the room. I want an official email from you, admitting that I warned the company about this issue ahead of time. Silence. Michael gritted his teeth. Rebecca, that's an internal matter. We don't need to. No email, no fix. Michael clenched his jaw, his eyes burning with frustration. But he had no choice. Finally, he nodded. 3 days later, the system was fully restored. Clients did not withdraw their contracts. Hartman Technologies narrowly escaped complete collapse. But more importantly, Rebecca had reclaimed her dignity. Michael Hartman was forced to send out the email, acknowledging his mistake. And 1 week later, he was fired by the board of directors. They called it the Lawson incident. As Rebecca prepared to leave on the last day of her contract, another email appeared. From the new CEO of Hartman Technologies. Rebecca, we would like to invite you back to the company in a senior leadership position. You may negotiate your salary. We cannot afford to lose someone like you again. Rebecca smirked, typing her reply. I have found a place that truly values me, but I do have one piece of advice. Learn to respect the people who dedicate their lives to your company. Don't let there be another Lawson incident. Send. She closed her laptop, stood up, and walked out of the building. She was no longer an employee of Hartman Technologies, but the company would never forget her. Rebecca Lawson stepped out of Hartman Technologies headquarters into the golden Dallas sunset, the glass-paneled skyscraper reflecting the warm glow. She had won. They once thought she was irrelevant. They once believed she could be replaced. But in just 2 weeks, they had been forced to beg her to return. She was no longer their employee, but now she was the one person they could never afford to lose. The contract ends, but the story doesn't. Today was the final day of the consulting contract that Hartman Technologies had paid a steep price to secure with her. She had fixed the Sentinel Shield system, ensuring that clients did not pull their contracts and that the company was not destroyed by their own incompetence. But she had not saved the company for free. Her contract had been paid in full, $6,000 a day for 2 full weeks, along with an additional condition. Michael Hartman had to publicly admit his mistakes in an email to the entire board of directors. And just as she had predicted, the consequences came swiftly and mercilessly. 3 days after Rebecca's contract ended, an emergency board meeting took place. They had read Michael's email, in which he admitted that he ignored Rebecca's warnings, fired her without a proper transition plan, and nearly destroyed the company's most critical security system. That morning, Rebecca received a call from an internal source. "Rebecca, you'll want to know this. The board is meeting right now, and they are not happy with Michael." "I'm not surprised," she replied, taking a sip of coffee and smirking slightly. That evening, the headlines broke across the business news. "Fire! Michael Hartman officially fired by board of directors after Sentinel Shield scandal." "Fire! Hartman Technologies undergoes leadership change. Former CEO's failures exposed." "Fire! The Lawson incident. A management disaster worth millions." Rebecca laughed as she read the headlines. Michael had once thought she was obsolete. Now he was the one being replaced. After the Sentinel Shield crisis, the Hartman Technologies board knew they could never allow such a mistake to happen again. They implemented a new set of policies. Pushpin all senior employees leaving the company must have a minimum 60-day transition period. Pushpin all documentation for critical systems must be maintained by a dedicated team. Pushpin no CEO could unilaterally fire key personnel without board approval. They called this policy the Lawson Protocol. Shortly after, Rebecca received an email from the board. "Rebecca, we want to thank you for helping the company avoid a disaster. As a way to honor your contributions, we have officially named our new management policy the Lawson Protocol. Would you consider returning to Hartman as a long-term consultant? We are open to discussing any salary you find suitable." Rebecca smirked. She clicked reply. "Thank you for the offer, but I have found a place that truly values me. Best of luck with the Lawson Protocol." And she hit send. 2 weeks later, Rebecca officially started her new job at Lockwood Data Solutions, a company specializing in cybersecurity. From day one, she was respected. No one undermined her experience. No one called her outdated. Instead, they wanted to learn from her. One morning, as she walked into the office with a hot cup of coffee, the chief technology officer approached her. "Rebecca, we're so glad to have you here. We'd love for you to lead a major project, building the next generation of cybersecurity systems." She raised an eyebrow, smiling. "I think I can help." For the first time in years, she felt truly valued. And the best part? She no longer had to prove her worth to anyone. A few months later, Rebecca received a message from an old colleague at Hartman Technologies. The company had still not fully recovered from the Sentinel Shield scandal. Many clients had lost trust, and some had left entirely. They were still operating, but they were no longer the same. And Rebecca? She had no regrets. She had given her youth and dedication to Hartman Technologies. But when they discarded her, they lost more than just an employee. They lost the very soul of the company. One Sunday morning, Rebecca sat in her favorite cafe, watching the city streets bustling with life. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. "Rebecca, this is Robert Sinclair, CEO of a major tech firm. We heard about the Lawson incident. I'd love to meet and discuss a senior leadership position with you. Perhaps we can build something even bigger than Sentinel Shield." Rebecca smiled, taking a slow sip of coffee. "I think I can make some time for that." She had not only moved past Hartman Technologies, she had leveled up entirely, because she was never replaceable. She was irreplaceable.